the day I handed over my entire inheritance to my children, I thought I was securing their future. But the very next moment, they turned to me and said I was too old to be part of their lives. That single sentence shattered everything I had ever believed about family. I always believed that family was the greatest treasure a person could have. My life was not built on gold or jewels, but on the laughter of my children and the warmth of their hugs when they were small. I raised them alone after their father passed away far too soon. Every meal I cooked, every lesson I taught, every late night I stayed awake worrying. I did it with the hope that one day they would look back and remember me as the woman who gave them everything she could. For years, I worked 2 jobs as a school teacher and a part-time librarian. My hands grew calloused, my back bent, and my heart often ached. But I never once complained. Every dollar I saved, I thought of my children's future. Every sacrifice I made, I believed it was an investment in their happiness. And when the years turned into decades, and they grew from children into adults with lives of their own, I felt proud that I had given them a foundation on which to build. As I approached my 60s, I began to think about the future, about what I would leave behind. I had no grand fortune, no castles or vast businesses, but I did have my modest house and the savings I had scraped together through the years. I had always dreamed that when the time came, I would pass these on to my children. I wanted them to feel secure, to never worry about the hardships I had endured. It was my final gift to them, a mother's legacy of love and care. So one rainy afternoon, after much thought, I called them both to my house. My daughter Emily came with her polished confidence, the kind of woman who never arrived without her phone in hand and an air of superiority in her step. My son, Daniel, followed a few minutes later, wearing his usual charming smile that could convince anyone he was kind. Though lately I had begun to sense a colder edge behind it. We sat around the dining table, the same table where they had once spilled juice boxes and argued over toys. Now, it was stacked with official papers. My heart trembled as I told them what I had decided. I want you both to know, I began, my voice unsteady but filled with sincerity, that I have updated my will. The inheritance will be divided equally between you, the house, the savings, everything I have. It will all be yours. For a moment, there was silence. I searched their faces for joy, for gratitude, for some sign of love. Emily leaned back in her chair, her lips curling into a small smirk. Daniel nodded, his eyes flickering not with gratitude but with something else, something I could not quite name. That's generous of you, Mom, Emily said finally, though her tone carried no warmth. It's about time we knew where we stood. I brushed her words aside, telling myself I was imagining her coldness. Daniel chimed in. Thank you, Mom. You've always been so giving. This means a lot. But even then, there was something rehearsed in his voice, like a man playing a part. That night, I lay awake in bed. For the first time, I felt a pang of doubt. I told myself I had done the right thing, that a mother's duty was to ensure her children's security. Yet, deep down, a whisper gnawed at me. Had I given away not just my house and savings, but also my worth in their eyes? The weeks that followed brought a change I could not ignore. Suddenly, Emily and Daniel stopped calling me as often. Invitations to dinner became rare. When I asked to visit, they always seemed too busy. I told myself it was normal, that they had their own lives. But the silence in my house grew heavier by the day. Then came the day that shattered everything. It was a bright Saturday morning. I had just watered the plants in my garden when my phone buzzed. I wiped my hands on my apron and picked it up. The message was from Emily. At first, I smiled, thinking perhaps it was an invitation or a kind word. But as my eyes scanned the screen, my breath caught in my throat. Mom, we're going on a family trip next month. You can't come. You're too old to keep up with us. It'll just be easier if you stay home. I read the words again and again, each time feeling as though a knife was twisting deeper into my chest. Too old. That was how my children saw me now. Not as the mother who had carried them through storms, not as the woman who had given them her entire life, but as a burden, an inconvenience. Shaking, I called Daniel, hoping he would deny it, that it was some misunderstanding. He answered on the second ring, his voice casual. Yes, Mom. Daniel, I said, struggling to steady my voice. Emily just sent me a message saying I can't come on the trip, that I'm too old. Is this true? There was a pause, the kind of silence that screams louder than words. Then he sighed. Mom, look, it's nothing personal. We just think it'll be easier if it's just us. The kids want to do things you probably wouldn't enjoy anyway. It's not about love, it's about practicality. Practicality, I whispered, my voice breaking. After everything I've given you, after I handed you my inheritance, this is what I get. I'm not even worth an invitation. Don't make this dramatic, he said coldly. You should be grateful we're thinking about you. It'll be too tiring for you. Just rest at home. He hung up before I could reply. I stood in my kitchen, my phone trembling in my hand, tears streaming down my cheeks. In that moment, something inside me cracked. All the years of sacrifice, all the sleepless nights, all the love I had poured into them. It had been reduced to nothing more than inconvenience in their eyes. I walked through the empty rooms of my house, the house I had just gifted away, and felt the walls close in on me. They had taken everything, my money, my home, and now even my dignity. But as I sank into my chair, a thought flickered in the darkness. If they thought I was too old to matter, too weak to fight back, then they had gravely underestimated me. That was the day I decided I would no longer be the mother who silently endured. I would no longer allow them to use me, to discard me as if I were nothing. What they did not know was that this story had only just begun, and I would make sure that by the time it ended, they would remember who I truly was. The week after Emily's cruel message, I lived in a fog. Each morning, I rose from bed, walked into the kitchen, and made tea, but nothing tasted the same. Even the sunlight streaming through the curtains felt harsh, almost mocking. I had always believed that if I gave my children everything, they would hold me close, but the truth was now glaring. I had given them my inheritance, and in return, they had stripped me of my dignity. On Friday evening, I received another message, this time from Daniel. He invited me to a family dinner at his house. For a brief moment, hope flickered in me. Maybe he regretted the way he had spoken. Maybe Emily had realized her words had cut too deep. I dressed carefully, choosing the navy dress I used to wear when we had special occasions, hoping that tonight, something might change. When I arrived at Daniel's house, I was struck by how lavish it had become. The new furniture gleamed, the carpets were plush, and the smell of expensive candles filled the air. I could not help but notice the renovations funded by the inheritance I had just given away. My heart twisted as I realized I had bought not just their comfort, but also my own exclusion. Emily was already there, her manicured hands wrapped around a glass of wine. She glanced at me briefly, then returned to scrolling through her phone. Daniel greeted me with a hug, but it was quick, perfunctory, the kind you give out of obligation rather than love. Mom, sit down, Daniel said, gesturing to the table. Dinner will be ready soon. The table was set beautifully, with shining cutlery and plates that looked as though they belonged in a magazine. I lowered myself into a chair, my hands folded in my lap. For a few minutes, I listened to them chat about their upcoming trip. The word family fell from their lips again and again, as if I were not sitting right there, as if I were already erased from that definition. Emily laughed as she described the activities she had planned. We'll go hiking in the mountains, take the kids ziplining, maybe even scuba diving. Oh, and Daniel booked a luxury villa right on the beach. I forced a smile, though my chest tightened with every word. They had planned everything down to the smallest detail, without once considering me. Finally, I spoke. It all sounds wonderful. I only wish I could join you. Emily set down her glass, her eyes cold. Mom, we already talked about this. You wouldn't be able to handle those activities. It's better for everyone if you stay behind. Daniel added, we don't want you to get hurt or slow us down. You should just relax here. It's for your own good. Their words stung like acid. I looked at them, my own children, and wondered how they could speak so callously to the woman who had given them everything. My throat tightened, but I swallowed my tears. I see, I said softly. You think I am too old to be part of your lives. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, but did not deny it. Emily, on the other hand, met my gaze with unflinching certainty. It is not about love, Mom. It is about reality. You need to accept your limitations. The conversation continued as though I had not spoken at all. They discussed flights, excursions, and shopping lists, leaving me to sit in silence. Each word they shared was another nail hammered into the coffin of the bond we once had. When dinner was finally served, I could barely eat. My appetite was gone, replaced by a simmering rage that spread through my veins. They were using my money, my inheritance, to fund a trip that excluded me. Every bite they took of the expensive meal before us was seasoned with my sacrifices. Yet they treated me as if I were invisible. At one point, Emily turned to me with a faint smile. "By the way, Mom, since you will not be traveling with us, could you water my plants while we are gone? It would be a huge help." Her audacity nearly took my breath away. Not only had she banished me from the trip, but she now wanted me to play caretaker while they enjoyed the fruits of my labor. I clenched my hands beneath the table, my nails digging into my palms. "Of course," I said, my voice steady, though my heart thundered. "I will take care of everything." Neither of them noticed the storm raging inside me. They laughed and toasted to their adventure, blind to the fact that their cruelty was transforming me. In that moment, I realized I had been too trusting, too giving. They believed my love was endless, that I would endure every insult, every betrayal, without protest. But they were wrong. After dinner, as I walked back to my small, silent house, my mind replayed every word, every smirk, every dismissive glance. By the time I closed the door behind me, a decision had begun to crystallize in my mind. If my children thought I was too old, too weak, too irrelevant, then they were about to learn a lesson they would never forget. I had given them everything, and they had turned their backs on me. But I still had something they did not expect: my resolve, my intelligence, and the ability to fight back in ways they could never anticipate. I sat at my desk, pulling out the box where I kept my most important documents, the deed to the house, the financial records, the will. I laid them all out before me. My children believed they already had control, that I had handed everything to them. But as I sifted through the papers, I realized they had made a critical mistake. The transfer of assets was not yet final. There were steps still pending, signatures required, legal filings incomplete. In their arrogance, they had assumed they already owned everything. But the truth was, I still had power. A slow smile spread across my face, one that felt unfamiliar, yet liberating. For years, I had been the selfless mother, the caretaker, the woman who gave without asking anything in return. Now, I would be something else. The inheritance they thought belonged to them could still be mine to control. And with that control, I would teach them what it meant to betray the person who had given them life. I leaned back in my chair, the storm within me settling into a sharp, icy clarity. They had cast me aside, dismissed me as too old, but they had forgotten that experience brings wisdom, and wisdom can be far more dangerous than youth. As the clock ticked past midnight, I whispered to myself, "This is not the end. This is only the beginning." The morning after the dinner at Daniel's house, I woke up with a sense of heaviness pressing down on my chest. The sound of birds outside felt hollow. The warmth of sunlight through the curtains felt undeserved. For years, my life had been devoted to my children, but now every memory of sacrifice seemed tainted. They had turned my love into a weapon against me, using it to secure their comfort while discarding me as a burden. I made a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table. The documents from the night before were still spread out before me. The house deed, the savings accounts, the legal papers. My hands trembled as I traced the edges of the files. These were not just pieces of paper, they were the sum of my life's work, the tangible proof of every hour I had labored, every dream I had deferred, and my children thought they already owned them. For hours, I sat there, replaying every cruel word. "Too old, slow us down, it's for your own good." Each phrase was like a hammer against my ribs. But then I remembered the realization I had stumbled upon last night. The inheritance transfer was not yet complete. The final signatures had not been filed. I still had time. I still had power. My heart pounded as I reached for the phone and called my attorney, Mr. Caldwell. He had handled my legal affairs for years, a kind man with thinning hair and a voice that always carried a note of calm authority. "Mrs. Williams," he said warmly when he answered, "what can I do for you today?" "Mr. Caldwell," I began, trying to keep my voice steady, "I need to know exactly what stage we are at with the inheritance transfer." There was a pause, then the rustle of papers. "Well, we have drafted the new will and the property transfer documents, but I have not yet filed them with the county office. I was waiting on your final confirmation before proceeding." Relief flooded me, so sharp it nearly brought tears to my eyes. "So, legally, nothing has changed yet." "That is correct," he replied. "You are still the sole owner of the house and all your accounts. Did you want to move forward as planned?" I took a deep breath. "No, I want everything to remain in my name. Do not file the transfer. In fact, I want to revisit the terms of my will altogether." Mr. Caldwell hesitated, but his professionalism remained intact. "Of course, Mrs. Williams. We can make any changes you like. Would you like to schedule a meeting?" "Yes," I said firmly. "As soon as possible." After hanging up, I sat back in my chair, a slow fire burning in my chest. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than despair. I felt strength. My children thought they had stripped me of everything, but in their arrogance, they had overlooked the truth. They had not won, not yet. That evening, I attended church, something I had not done in months. The hymns echoed through the vaulted ceilings, and though my faith had been shaken by betrayal, I found comfort in the words. I did not pray for forgiveness or for my children to change. Instead, I prayed for clarity, for the wisdom to act with both strength and justice. As I left the church, I encountered Mrs. Thompson, an old friend who had lived in the neighborhood for decades. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. "My dear, it has been too long," she said, embracing me warmly. "How are the children?" The question pierced me like a blade. I forced a smile, unwilling to reveal the shame of my situation. "They are busy with their own lives," Mrs. Thompson chuckled softly. "Children always are. But remember, dear, we mothers have a strength they often underestimate. Never let them forget that." Her words stayed with me as I walked home beneath the twilight sky. Strength, yes, that was what I needed now. Not bitterness, not tears, but strength. The following morning, I went to Mr. Caldwell's office. The smell of polished wood and old books greeted me as I entered. He rose from behind his desk, shaking my hand firmly. "Mrs. Williams, it is good to see you. Now, tell me, what changes do you wish to make?" I sat down, my hands folded in my lap. Though my resolve was firm, "I want to revoke the inheritance transfer. My house, my savings, everything remains in my control. And I want to draft a new will, one that does not place Emily and Daniel as the sole beneficiaries." Mr. Caldwell raised his eyebrows but said nothing, waiting for me to continue. "I want to include charities I believe in," I said. "I want to set aside funds for the local library, for the school where I taught, for causes that actually matter. If my children see me as nothing more than a burden, then they do not deserve the fruits of my life's work." Mr. Caldwell nodded, slowly. "I understand. We can make those changes immediately. Are you certain this is what you want?" "I have never been more certain," I replied, as the pen scratched across the paper. Sealing the revisions, I felt an unexpected sense of liberation. For years, I had clung to the belief that my children were my legacy, that everything I had should go to them. But now I saw the truth. My legacy was not just in them, it was in the values I lived by, the community I served, the lives I touched. That when I left the office, the air felt lighter. For the first time in months, I was walking toward something rather than away from it. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Emily and Daniel had shown their true colors. When they discovered that the inheritance was not theirs, they would not react kindly. I could already imagine the storm that would follow, the outrage, the accusations. Yet instead of fear, I felt anticipation. They believed I was powerless, too old to matter. Soon, they would learn that age does not weaken resolve, it sharpens it. That night, I sat in my living room, staring at the family photos that lined the shelves. Emily, in her graduation gown, Daniel holding his firstborn, the three of us smiling on a beach vacation long ago. I touched the frames, my fingers lingering on the glass. The love I had once felt so strongly for them was not gone, but it had changed. It was no longer the unconditional devotion of a mother to her children. It had become something fiercer, something tempered by pain and betrayal. I whispered to the empty room, "You think I am too old to join you. You think I am too weak to fight back. But you will see. You will both see." In the days that followed, I began to prepare. I visited the bank, reviewed my accounts, and ensured that everything was secured under my name. I spoke with Mr. Caldwell about creating trusts for the charities I supported, ensuring that my wishes could not be overturned. I even began discreetly looking at retirement communities, not because I wanted to leave my house, but because I wanted options. If my children thought they could corner me, they would be mistaken. The more I planned, the more my confidence grew. Every detail I arranged was another brick in the wall of my resolve. They had taken me for granted for too long, and now the balance of power was shifting. One evening, Emily called me, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Hi, Mom. Just wanted to remind you to water my plants while we are away. Oh, and if you could pick up some packages that will be delivered, that would be great. That would be great." I almost laughed at her arrogance. She still believed I would play the obedient mother, tending to her home while she enjoyed my inheritance. She had no idea what was coming. "Yes, Emily," I said calmly. "I will take care of it." When she hung up, I sat in silence, my mind clear. They thought they were in control, but they were standing on a foundation made of sand. One wave from me, and everything they believed to be secure would crumble. Scene 3 ends with me standing at the edge of a new chapter, one where I am no longer the victim. The stage is set, the pieces are in place, and soon my children will realize that the mother they dismissed as too old still has the power to change everything. The days passed quietly after I met with Mr. Caldwell. But beneath the surface of that calm was a storm I knew would eventually break. My children believed they had secured their future, that my house and savings were already theirs. I imagined the smug conversations between Emily and Daniel, perhaps even laughter at how easy it had been to manipulate me. Yet, while they indulged in their illusions, I was building my defenses. I spent my mornings going through old boxes, sorting through keepsakes and papers. At first, it was painful to see the memories: baby shoes, handmade Mother's Day cards, photos of family trips where the smiles seemed genuine. But as I continued, I realized I was not only revisiting my past but reclaiming it. These items were proof that my life had been more than just servitude to children who now discarded me. In the afternoons, I met with Mr. Caldwell again. Together we finalized the changes to my will, shifting the bulk of my assets into trusts for charities, educational scholarships, and community projects. We made certain that every detail was airtight, that no legal loophole could allow my children to challenge it. Each signature I placed on those documents felt like a declaration of independence. By the end of the week, I was ready for them to discover the truth, ready for the inevitable confrontation. The call came sooner than I expected. I was in the garden trimming roses when my phone rang. It was Daniel. His tone was brisk, businesslike, as if he were speaking to a tenant rather than his mother. "Mom, Emily and I need to meet with you tonight. It's important." There was no warmth in his voice, only command. I resisted the urge to laugh. They were expecting compliance, as always. "Of course," I said evenly. "I will be here." When they arrived that evening, I noticed the way they carried themselves. Emily stepped out of her sleek car in designer heels, her expression a mix of impatience and smugness. Daniel followed, his jaw set, his suit pressed, exuding the air of someone who believed he was in control. They entered the house without waiting for me to open the door fully, as if the place already belonged to them. "We need to talk," Daniel said, his eyes narrowing. I gestured toward the living room. "Then sit. Let us talk like family." But there was no sense of family in their demeanor. They sat across from me like prosecutors preparing to deliver a verdict. Emily was the first to speak. "We spoke with Mr. Caldwell today. He told us you counseled the inheritance transfer. Is that true?" Her words cut through the air like a knife. There it was, the storm breaking. "Yes," I answered calmly, meeting her gaze without flinching. "It is true." Daniel leaned forward, his voice rising. "What do you mean? You canceled it. You promised us. You told us the house and the accounts would be ours. We have made plans, Mom. We are counting on it." I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me, as if I had been preparing for this moment my whole life. "I did not promise you anything. I discussed the possibility, but nothing was finalized. And after your behavior, after the way you spoke to me, I decided I could no longer trust you with what I have built." Emily scoffed, her tone dripping with disdain. "This is ridiculous. We were only being honest with you. You cannot come on every trip. You cannot expect us to include you in everything. That does not mean you should punish us by taking away what is rightfully ours." I leaned forward, my voice firm. "Rightfully yours. Tell me, Emily, what have you sacrificed for this house? What years of labor did you pour into these savings? What nights did you stay awake, wondering how to feed 2 children with barely enough money for rent? Nothing is rightfully yours. It is mine. Every brick, every dollar, every drop of sweat is mine." Daniel slammed his hand on the table. "You are being dramatic. We are your children. Everything you have should go to us. That is the natural order, the natural order," I repeated, my voice steady but sharp. "The natural order is respect. The natural order is gratitude. You showed me neither. Instead, You humiliated me, discarded me, told me I was too old to join you. You think you can treat me as if I am a burden and still inherit everything I worked for. No, that ends now. For a moment, silence hung in the room, heavy and suffocating. I could see the anger simmering in their eyes, the disbelief that their control over me was slipping away. Emily was the first to break. She stood, her voice trembling with fury. If you think you can cut us out and hand everything to strangers and charities, you are delusional. We will fight this. We will contest every paper you sign. I rose to meet her height, my voice unwavering. Then fight. But know this: I have made sure my decisions are ironclad. Mr. Caldwell is not only my attorney, he is my ally. Every step has been documented, every detail secured. You will not win. Daniel shook his head, his expression twisted with disbelief. I cannot believe this. After everything we have done for you, what have you done for me? I interrupted, my voice sharp. Tell me, Daniel, was it the time you forgot my birthday for 3 years in a row? Was it when Emily told me I was too old to go on vacation with you? Was it when you both took my money for your house and then excluded me from your lives? If that is what you call doing something for me, then you have a strange definition of love. The truth struck them like blows, and I could see it in the way their faces faltered for a moment before hardening again. They were not used to hearing me speak this way. For years, I had been the accommodating mother, the woman who nodded and smiled and gave without question. That woman was gone. Finally, Emily spoke again, her tone icy. You are making a mistake, Mother. One day you will regret this. I straightened my shoulders, feeling the weight of decades lifting off me. No, Emily. The mistake was believing my children loved me for who I am, not what I could give them. I regret that it took me this long to see the truth, but I will not regret taking back my power. They left shortly after, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. The silence that followed was almost deafening, but it was not empty. It was filled with a strange new strength, a certainty that I had reclaimed my place in my own life. I sat alone in the living room, the echo of their anger still lingering. But instead of tears, I felt pride. They could rage, they could threaten, they could plot, but they could not take from me what I refused to give. Later that night, as I prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror. For the first time in years, I did not see a tired, aging woman. I saw someone fierce, someone who had faced betrayal and chosen not to be broken by it. Scene 4 ends with me whispering to myself, not in despair but in triumph. They thought I was too old to join them. They thought I was powerless. But they were wrong. This fight has only just begun. After the confrontation, the house felt strangely alive. The air carried the residue of raised voices. The walls echoed with words that could never be taken. Bafta. Yet I did not feel crushed by what had happened. Instead, I felt steady, anchored. I had finally spoken the truth to my children. And though their anger had been sharp, it no longer frightened me. But I knew them well. Emily and Daniel were not the type to retreat quietly. Their entitlement ran too deep, their greed too ingrained. It was only a matter of time before they struck back. The first sign came 2 days later. I was returning from the market with a basket of fresh bread and fruit when I saw Emily's car parked outside my house. She was leaning against it, sunglasses perched on her nose, arms crossed. She looked every bit the businesswoman, poised and calculating. Mom, she greeted me, her smile forced. We need to talk. I unlocked the front door and gestured inside. Then come in. Once seated at the kitchen table, she removed her sunglasses and folded her hands. I think things got a little heated the other night. Daniel and we may have said things we did not mean. Her tone was syrupy sweet, but I recognized the performance. Emily had always been the more manipulative of the two, skilled at twisting words to get what she wanted. You said I was too old to be included in your lives, I reminded her coldly. That was not said in heat. That was the truth. Emily exhaled dramatically. Look, I admit we were harsh, but Daniel and I are under a lot of stress. Bills, mortgages, kids, you know how it is. We just want to make sure everything is secure for the future. The future, I repeated, my voice firm. By that, you mean your future, not mine. She leaned forward, her voice softening. Mom, think about it. You are not getting any younger. Do you really want to keep managing all these accounts, dealing with legal papers, handling property taxes? Would it not be easier to just let us take care of it all? We only want to make things simpler for you. There, it was the same tactic they had used before. Dressing greed in the clothes of concern. I am managing just fine, I replied, sipping my tea, and I will continue to manage just fine. Emily's mask cracked for just a second, irritation flashing across her face. Why are you being so difficult about this? Every parent passes things down to their children. That is how it works. I set my cup down with deliberate calm. Parents pass things down when children earn it. When children respect them, you have done neither. Her jaw tightened. She knew she was losing control of the conversation. Rising from her chair, she straightened her blazer. Daniel will be coming by tomorrow. Maybe you will listen to him. She left without another word, the slam of the door punctuating her frustration. The next day, as promised, Daniel arrived. His approach was different. Where Emily tried manipulation, Daniel wielded intimidation. He strode into the living room without asking, his presence filling the space like a storm cloud. Mom, we need to stop this nonsense. Nonsense, I asked calmly. Yes, he snapped. This whole charade of cutting us out, handing your money to strangers, it is ridiculous. We are your family. We are owed this. Owed, I repeated, arching a brow. Tell me, Daniel, what exactly do you believe I owe you? His face reddened. You owe us everything. Without us, you would have no legacy. Without us? What are you? I stood, meeting his anger with steady eyes. Without you, Daniel, I am still a woman who worked every day of her life. I am still someone who built a home, raised children, contributed to my community. I am still someone who has worth. Do not mistake my motherhood for weakness. He stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. Do not push us too far, Mom. If you think you can humiliate us, cut us out, and not pay the price, you are mistaken. We will challenge you legally. We will drag this through court if we have to. I did not flinch. Then you will lose. Every paper is signed, every detail secured. You have no claim. For a moment, he glared at me, his fists clenched. Then he turned abruptly and stormed out, muttering curses under his breath. As the door closed behind him, I exhaled slowly. The threats had begun, just as I knew they would. But instead of fear, I felt clarity. Each attempt they made to intimidate or manipulate only proved how little they truly cared for me. That night I wrote in my journal. It was something I had not done in years, but the words flowed easily. They see me as an obstacle, not a mother. They want my house, my savings, my security, but they will not take my dignity. They will not take my spirit. I will not let them. Days passed, and their tactics escalated. Emily began calling daily, her tone alternating between sugary sweetness and veiled threats. Mom, if you just reconsider, we can put all this unpleasantness behind us. Then, in the next breath, do you really want to die alone, knowing your own children turned against you? Daniel, meanwhile, tried a different approach. He sent his wife, Claire, to visit me. Claire arrived with a bouquet of flowers and a tray of cookies, smiling as though nothing were wrong. Mrs. Williams, she said gently, I think there has been some misunderstanding. Daniel and Emily love you very much. They only want what is best for you. I accepted the flowers, set them on the table, and looked her square in the eyes. Claire, I appreciate your effort, but love does not look like exclusion. Love does not sound like being told I am too old to be part of my own family. If they loved me, they would not treat me this way. Her smile faltered. She had no answer. For that, she left quickly, her cookies untouched. The visits and calls continued for weeks, each more desperate than the last. It became clear that my children were panicking. They had counted on my inheritance as if it were already theirs, and now the ground was slipping from beneath them. But their schemes were not limited to persuasion. One afternoon, I returned home from the library to find my mailbox pried open, papers scattered across the lawn. I gathered them quickly, heart pounding. Had they tried to tamper with my financial statements, my legal documents? The realization hit me like ice. They were not just angry anymore. They were willing to cross boundaries, to break laws, to get what they wanted. I called Mr. Caldwell immediately, explaining what had happened. His voice was grave. Mrs. Williams, I recommend installing extra security, cameras, locks, the works, and keep all important documents in a safe deposit box at the bank. Do not underestimate how far desperation can push people. I followed his advice. By the next day, a security company had installed cameras around the house. and I transferred every critical document to the bank. That night, I sat by the window, watching the footage on my monitor. The sight of my own home, under surveillance, made me ache, but I knew it was necessary. As I sat there, I realized something. This battle was no longer just about money. It was about power, respect, and dignity. My children had revealed who they truly were, people willing to manipulate, intimidate, and even steal to secure their inheritance. And if they thought I was too old to fight back, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. Scene 5 closes, with me locking the door, my hand firm on the key, whispering into the quiet house, "This home is mine. This life is mine, and I will not surrender it to anyone, not even my own children." The tension between my children and me had grown into a storm that never seemed to pass. Emily and Daniel had exhausted their attempts at charm and persuasion, and their intimidation had failed to bend me. I could sense the shift in their tone with every conversation. They were done pretending. They were preparing for open war. It began with subtle moves. One morning, as I was sipping tea by the window, the phone rang. It was Mr. Caldwell. His usually calm voice carried unease. "Mrs. Williams, I received a call today from Daniel. He demanded copies of your will and property documents, claiming he had the right to review them as your son. I, of course, denied him, but it is clear they are becoming more aggressive." A cold weight settled in my stomach, though I had expected this. "Thank you for informing me, Mr. Caldwell. They have no right. Everything remains under my control." "Indeed," he replied firmly, "but I suggest you remain vigilant. Their next steps may not be so simple." His warning proved correct within days. Emily began spreading whispers among family friends. I learned of it when Mrs. Thompson, my neighbor, stopped by with a furrowed brow. "My dear," she began gently, "I do not mean to pry, but I heard something troubling. Emily told the book club that your memory is failing, that you are no longer capable of handling your affairs. She implied you may have been manipulated into changing your will." I gripped the arm of my chair so tightly my knuckles whitened. The betrayal cut deeper than before. It was one thing to attack me in private, but to smear my name in public, to undermine my reputation and dignity, was a cruelty I had not anticipated. "I assure you, Mrs. Thompson," I said, steadying my voice, "my mind is sharper than it has ever been. Emily is spreading lies because she did not get her way." Mrs. Thompson nodded, anger flashing in her eyes. "I thought as much. Do not worry, dear. People who truly know you will not believe such nonsense." But I worried. I knew how quickly rumors could spread, how swiftly a reputation could be tarnished. And if Emily was laying the groundwork to portray me as incompetent, I could guess her ultimate plan, to have me declared unfit so they could seize control of my estate through the courts. That night, I could not sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. My children were no longer just greedy, they were dangerous. They wanted to erase my voice entirely. The very next morning, the danger became real. A letter arrived in the mail, stamped with the insignia of a law office. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a formal notice. Emily and Daniel were petitioning the court to review my mental competency, claiming I was no longer able to manage my financial and legal affairs. For a moment, the room spun. They had crossed the line I feared most. This was no longer a family dispute, was a battle for my very identity, for my right to be seen as capable and whole. I sat at the kitchen table with the letter in my hands, my pulse pounding in my ears. Anger surged through me, burning away the despair. They wanted to strip me of my dignity, to declare me incapable of managing my own life. All so they could steal what was mine. No, I would not allow it. I called Mr. Caldwell immediately. He listened carefully, then spoke with firm resolve. "Mrs. Williams, this is serious, but do not be alarmed. We will respond strongly. You are of sound mind, and we will gather evidence to prove it. Medical evaluations, witness statements, financial records, everything that shows you are in complete control." His confidence steadied me. "Do you think they can win?" I asked. No, he said firmly. "Not if we prepare. They are relying on lies. The truth is on your side." The following week became a whirlwind of appointments and preparation. I visited my doctor, who conducted thorough evaluations and confirmed I was in excellent mental health. I spoke with neighbors, friends, and colleagues who were more than willing to provide statements about my clarity and independence. I organized financial records that demonstrated I had been managing everything without issue. At each step, my anger hardened into determination. If my children wanted a war, I would fight with every tool available. But the cruelty of their tactics did not stop there. One afternoon, as I returned from the doctor's office, I found graffiti scrawled across my front gate. In red paint, the words screamed, "Old fool." My hands trembled as I read them, but deep inside, a stronger emotion took root. Rage. They wanted to humiliate me, to frighten me into surrender. Instead, they fueled the fire in my chest. I called the police, filed a report, and had the graffiti removed by evening. As I watched the workers scrub away the red letters, I whispered to myself, "They think I am weak. They think I will break. But they are wrong. Every attack makes me stronger." The day of the court hearing arrived. I walked into the courthouse with my head held high, dressed in my best navy suit. Mr. Caldwell walked beside me, a stack of documents in his hand, his calm presence a shield against the storm. Across the aisle, Emily and Daniel sat with their attorney. They looked smug, certain that their scheme would succeed. When Emily caught my eye, she smirked, as if victory was already hers. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. Emily's attorney painted a picture of an aging woman losing her grip on reality, too confused to handle her affairs, vulnerable to manipulation. Emily even shed tears as she claimed she was only acting out of love, trying to protect me from myself. I sat silently, my hands folded, refusing to let their lies shake me. When it was our turn, Mr. Caldwell presented the evidence. The doctor's evaluations, the letters from neighbors, the financial records. Witness after witness testified to my clarity, my independence, my strength. Finally, the judge turned to me. "Mrs. Williams, do you wish to speak?" I rose, my legs steady beneath me, my voice clear. "Yes, Your Honor, I am not incompetent. I am not confused. I know exactly what I am doing, and I have chosen to keep control of what I worked my whole life to build. My children are not here out of love. They are here out of greed. They told me I was too old to join them, that I no longer belonged in their lives, and now they want to erase my right to live on my own terms. I will not let them." The courtroom was silent when I finished. The judge studied me for a long moment before delivering his decision. "The court finds no evidence of incompetence. Mrs. Williams is fully capable of managing her affairs. The petition is dismissed." Relief washed over me like a wave. Emily and Daniel's faces twisted in fury, their plans crumbling before them. As I left the courtroom, I felt taller, stronger, unshakable. They had tried to strip me of my dignity, to drag me into the shadows of shame. But I had stood in the light and prevailed. Scene 6 ends with me walking out of the courthouse, the sun warming my face, whispering to myself, "They tried to silence me, but my voice is stronger than ever. This battle is not over, but today, I won." The courtroom victory gave me strength, but it also made my children more desperate. They had tasted humiliation, and rather than reflect on their actions, they chose vengeance. At first I thought the worst was behind me. I returned to my daily life, my routines giving me comfort. I tended my garden, brewed my morning tea, and kept my appointments. Friends dropped by to congratulate me on standing tall against Emily and Daniel. Many admired my courage, calling me an inspiration. I cherished their words, but in the back of my mind, I knew the war was not finished. I was proven right within 2 weeks. I had gone to the market on a sunny afternoon, enjoying the bustle of the vendors and the fragrance of fresh flowers. As I returned home, bags in hand, I noticed something strange. The front door of my house was slightly ajar. My heart jumped. I always locked the door. Always. I pushed it open cautiously. Inside, the silence felt wrong. I stepped into the living room and froze. Papers were scattered across the floor. Drawers pulled open, cabinets emptied. My home had been ransacked. I dropped the grocery bags and rushed from room to room. Jewelry boxes overturned, important documents gone, valuables missing. My hands shook as I picked up an overturned photo frame. The glass cracked across the smiling faces of my children from years ago. I called the police immediately. They arrived quickly, took statements, and dusted for fingerprints. As they worked, I stood by the window, staring into the street, my mind racing. The officer approached me. "Ma'am, this looks like a targeted break-in. Whoever did this knew what they were looking for." "What do you mean?" I asked. They ignored electronics, ignored cash, left out They went straight for documents and jewelry. That usually means someone wanted more than quick money. A chill spread through me. I knew exactly who wanted my documents. Emily and Daniel. I told the officer my suspicion. He listened carefully but shook his head. We cannot accuse without evidence, but I recommend you secure your property better. Install cameras, alarms, reinforced locks. Whoever did this may return. That night, I sat in my ravaged living room, the broken photo frame on the table before me. The faces of my children stared up, divided by a jagged crack of glass. My heart ached, not for the lost jewelry or the missing papers, but for the realization that my own flesh and blood might have invaded my sanctuary. But if they thought fear would push me into submission, they were wrong. The next morning, I called a security company. Within days, cameras and alarms guarded every corner of my house. I reinforced the doors and windows, turning my home into a fortress. I refused to be an easy target. Still, their next move struck deeper than burglary. A letter arrived in the mail, but this one was different. It bore the seal of my bank. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a notice that large sums of money had been withdrawn from one of my accounts. Tens of thousands were gone. I rushed to the bank, fury burning in my chest. The manager, Mr. Harper, welcomed me into his office. He looked nervous. "Mrs. Williams, we processed several withdrawals last week under your name, but the signatures were flagged for review. They did not match your usual handwriting, because I never signed them," I snapped. "Boff." Mr. Harper leaned forward, lowering his voice. "The requests came with identification, copies of your driver's license, utility bills, and even a notarized letter. Whoever did this had detailed information about you." I clenched my fists. That information was in my house. In the documents, stolen during the break-in. Mr. Harper nodded grimly. "It seems so. We are launching a fraud investigation, and we will work to recover your funds. But I must be honest, these cases can be complicated." I walked out of the bank with fire in my veins. My children had not only tried to strip me of my dignity through the courts, they had now stolen from me outright. I called Mr. Caldwell and explained everything. He was outraged. "This is criminal behavior. If they are behind it, they have crossed a line that no parent should ever imagine their children capable of. We will not only recover your losses but also pursue charges if necessary." As he spoke, a wave of sorrow washed over me. I never wanted to drag my children into the criminal system. I had hoped for reconciliation, for healing, but they were leaving me no choice. The following week, my worst fear was confirmed. Detectives investigating the bank fraud traced the forged documents to a notary who admitted he had been hired by Emily. She had claimed she was helping her mother with estate matters. He had no idea the documents were forged. Asterisk with that revelation, the truth was undeniable. My own daughter had stolen from me. When the detective informed me, I sat silently for a long time. The betrayal cut so deep I could hardly breathe. Emily, the little girl I once carried on my hip, who used to beg me to braid her hair before school, had broken into my home, stolen my identity, and robbed me blind. But grief soon hardened into steel. I met with Mr. Caldwell again. He looked at me with compassion. "I know this is painful, Mrs. Williams, but you must decide how far you are willing to go. Pressing charges against your daughter will be a heavy burden." I closed my eyes, remembering Emily's smirk in the courtroom, her cruel words, her lies, remembering Daniel's silence, his complicity. They had chosen this path, not me. "I will not be their victim," I said firmly. "If the law is what it takes to stop them, then so be it." Mr. Caldwell nodded. "Then we proceed." The next weeks became a blur of legal motions, police reports, and investigations. The story spread quickly through the community. Neighbors whispered, friends offered condolences, but I walked with my head high. I refused to be shamed by their actions. The shame belonged to them. Then came the confrontation I will never forget. One evening, as I returned from a meeting with Mr. Caldwell, I found Emily and Daniel waiting on my porch. They looked furious, cornered animals ready to lash out. I stopped at the bottom of the steps. "What do you want?" I demanded. Emily's voice shook with anger. "How could you do this? You went to the police. You're destroying us." "You destroyed yourselves," I replied coldly. "You broke into my home. You forged my name. You stole from me." Daniel stepped forward, his jaw tight. "We are your children. Families do not drag each other into court and prison." I met his gaze without flinching. Families also do not betray the ones who gave them everything. You chose greed over love. You chose lies over truth. Do not lecture me about family. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of remorse. They were tears of rage. If you go through with this, you will never see us again. Never see us again. The words pierced me like knives, but I stood my ground. I already lost you the moment you turned against me. Do not threaten me with what has already happened. For a long moment, silence hung heavy between us. Then Emily spat out, "You will regret this," and stormed away. Daniel followed, his face hard with resentment. I watched them go, my heart aching but resolute. They had pushed me beyond the point of return. That night, as I sat in my fortified home, I realized something important. This war was no longer just about money or inheritance. It was about power, dignity, and the right to live free from fear. My children had shown me who they truly were, and though the pain was unbearable, I could no longer deny it. Scene 7 ends with me sitting alone, the hum of the new security system filling the silence, whispering to myself, they wanted to break me, but I will not break. I will fight until the end, even if it means standing alone. The legal process moved forward like a storm, and every step dragged my children deeper into the consequences of their choices. For me, the truth was clear. For them, truth was irrelevant. They began to weave lies, not just in court but in the fabric of the community around us. It began quietly. A neighbor I had known for 20 years passed me on the street without so much as a nod. At church, a woman who used to sit beside me during services shifted to another pew. A friend canceled our lunch plans, citing sudden illness. But I later saw her laughing at a cafe with Emily. The message was clear. Emily and Daniel were poisoning the well of my reputation. One afternoon, I was shopping at the market when two women I recognized from the community center stopped talking as I approached. Their eyes narrowed, their whispers sharp. I caught fragments. How could she? Her own children, so cruel. I wanted to scream at them, to tell them the truth, but my voice locked inside my chest. Instead, I paid for my groceries and walked home with my head held high, though inside, my heart trembled. That evening, the whispers became reality. I received a letter from the Community Association, informing me that several members had raised concerns about my behavior toward family and questioning whether I was fit to serve on the board. I had dedicated a decade of my life to. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter shaking in my hands. My children had stolen not just money and trust, but now my place in the very community I had built my life around. I called Mr. Caldwell the next morning. He sighed heavily. I feared this might happen. Emily and Daniel are trying to turn public opinion against you. It is a cruel tactic, but an effective one. What do? I asked. You keep standing in the truth. We will win in court, and once the truth is revealed, those who doubted you will see, but you must endure the storm first. Endure. That word echoed in my mind as I faced day after day of cold shoulders and harsh whispers. Then came the night that pushed me to the edge. I attended a church gathering, determined not to hide. When I entered, conversations hushed. I walked through the crowd, holding my head high, but the stares burned. During the meeting, one of the elders, Mrs. Thompson, stood up. Her voice was sharp. I cannot sit silent any longer. We all know what is happening. A mother dragging her own children into court, threatening prison, destroying her family. Is this what we want to condone in our community? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. My chest tightened. I stood slowly, my legs trembling. I never wanted this, I said, my voice clear but filled with sorrow. I gave my children everything. I gave them my inheritance before I was even gone. And they chose to betray me. They stole from me. They broke into my home. They forged my name. I did not start this war, but I will not allow myself to be destroyed by it. Silence followed. Some faces softened with sympathy, but others remained hard, unmoved. Mrs. Thompson shook her head. You should forgive. Family is family, no matter what. The words sliced me. Forgive. Always forgive. That had been my mantra for years. But forgiveness had become a weapon used against me, a demand that I lay myself bare for more wounds. I left the gathering early, the cold night air biting my skin as tears stung my eyes. I had never felt so alone. At home, I sat in the dark, replaying every moment. Emily and Daniel were not just attacking me in private, they were orchestrating a campaign to destroy me publicly. If they could make me look like the villain, then perhaps they thought the courts would view me differently too. The next day proved their strategy. A local paper ran an article, clearly fed by Emily, painting me as a bitter old woman, unwilling to let go of control, accusing me of using the legal system to punish my children. Reading the lies in black and white nearly broke me. But something inside refused to shatter. I called Mr. Caldwell again. They are not just fighting in court. They are fighting in the court of public opinion. We must respond. He agreed. We will prepare a statement. But remember, Mrs. Williams, public perception shifts like the wind. Focus on the law. That is where the truth will stand. Despite his reassurance, I knew I needed to take matters into my own hands too. The following Sunday, I stood at the church service once more, but this time I requested to speak. The pastor granted me a few minutes. I walked to the front, my hands steady, my heart fierce. I have been accused of cruelty, of betrayal, of tearing apart my family, I began, my eyes scanning the congregation. But let me tell you what betrayal truly looks like. It looks like giving your children your inheritance only for them to call you too old to join them. It looks like coming home to find your house broken into and your memories scattered across the floor. It looks like seeing your name forged on documents, your bank account emptied, your identity stolen. That is betrayal. The room was silent. Some looked away, ashamed. Others stared at me with wide eyes. I did not choose this fight. I was forced into it. And I will stand, not because I hate my children, but because I will not let lies destroy me. I deserve dignity. I deserve truth, and I will not be silenced. I stepped down, my heart pounding, but I knew I had reclaimed something important. My voice. That night, messages began to arrive. Quiet apologies from friends who had doubted me. Offers of support. Small, hesitant gestures, but they gave me strength. Yet even as I felt a flicker of hope, I knew Emily and Daniel would not stop. They had already crossed every line. What was left except to strike harder? I prepared myself for whatever storm was coming, whispering into the darkness of my quiet home, they may have the crowd, but I have the truth, and the truth will be my shield. The whispers of the community and the venom of public opinion had shaken me, but I had found my voice again. I thought perhaps Emily and Daniel would finally stop, realizing they could not break me. I was wrong. Their next move was more brutal than anything they had done before. It began with a letter from the court. I opened it carefully, expecting another update about the fraud case. Instead, the words nearly made my knees buckle. It was a petition, filed by my own children to have me declared mentally unfit. I read the words over and over, my hands trembling. They claimed I was unstable, incapable of managing my affairs, prone to paranoia and delusions. They argued that I was unfit to control my finances or my property, and that a guardian should be appointed to oversee everything. That guardian, of course, they suggested, should be Daniel. Thought the betrayal was so vicious I could hardly breathe. I sat at my kitchen table, the petition lying open, my mind racing. To steal from me was one thing, to attack me publicly was another, but to strip me of my very independence, to declare me unfit, was a cruelty I had never imagined possible from the children I raised. I called Mr. Caldwell immediately. He arrived at my home within the hour, his face grim as he read through the documents. This is their most dangerous move yet, he said, his voice steady but urgent. If the court sides with them, you could lose control over your assets, your decisions, even your daily life. They would make you a prisoner in your own world. My stomach turned. How can they even claim such lies? I am not unfit. I am not unstable. He looked at me with firm eyes. I know that, and we will prove it, but you must understand, courts take these petitions seriously. We will need medical evaluations, testimony, and undeniable proof of your competence. They are betting on humiliation, hoping you will not withstand the process. I straightened my shoulders. Then we will give them a battle they will regret. The weeks that followed were some of the most grueling of my life. I underwent evaluations with doctors and psychologists, each appointment a reminder that my own children were trying to paint me as broken. I sat in sterile offices, answering questions about memory, judgment, and daily life. Each time, I felt both insulted and determined. The doctors, to their credit, treated me fairly. They tested me thoroughly, and I met their eyes with unwavering strength. I recited lists backward, solved puzzles, recounted details of my life with precision. I wanted them to see not just my competence but my fire. Meanwhile, Emily and Daniel began spreading new rumors. They told relatives I was losing my mind, that I was lashing out because of age, that I imagined betrayals that were not real. Some believed them, others stayed silent. One evening my sister Margaret called. Her voice was hesitant. "I heard what Emily has been saying, that you are struggling, that you are confused, that you are confused." I felt tears rise, but I kept my voice steady. "Margaret, do I sound confused to you?" She was quiet for a moment, before sighing. "No, you sound stronger than ever. I will testify for you if it comes to that." Her words gave me hope, but I knew not everyone would stand by me. The hearing was scheduled for late autumn. The courthouse was packed again, neighbors and curious onlookers filling the benches. Emily and Daniel sat side by side, dressed sharply, their faces masks of false concern. When the judge entered, silence fell. The case began with their attorney painting a grim picture of me as a frail, delusional woman, incapable of rational thought. They spoke of imagined conversations, supposed forgetfulness, fabricated outbursts. Emily even took the stand, tears streaming down her face as she described me as a danger to myself. She said she feared for my well-being, that she only wanted to protect me. Her performance was so convincing that I saw heads in the audience nodding. When it was my turn, I walked to the stand slowly but deliberately, my chin high. I looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor," I began, "I may be older, but I am not broken. I manage my home, I handle my finances, and I have stood strong through betrayal most people could not imagine. My children have not come here out of love or concern. They have come here out of greed. They wish to control what is not theirs and silence the mother who gave them everything." Mr. Caldwell guided me through the questions with precision. I recounted dates, names, financial details, and events with clarity. I demonstrated my memory, my reasoning, my independence. Each word I spoke was a stone laid in the foundation of my defense. Then the doctors testified. One by one, they stated clearly that I was fully competent, mentally sound, and capable of managing my life. Their reports were detailed and undeniable. By the time Mr. Caldwell delivered his closing argument, I saw doubt creeping into the faces of the judge and jury. He spoke passionately, his voice ringing through the courtroom. "This case is not about protection, it is about power. These children are not concerned for their mother's welfare. They are concerned for their own gain. They would see her silenced, stripped of dignity, and bound by lies, all because she refused to let them rob her, unchecked. The truth is simple. Mrs. Williams is not unfit. She is unbroken, and the only unfitness we see in this courtroom is the moral unfitness of those who would betray their own blood." The judge adjourned, announcing that the decision would be delivered the following week. The wait was agonizing. Every day felt like a trial of endurance. I busied myself with my garden, with reading, with writing in my journal. But the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily. Finally, the day came. The courtroom filled once more. The judge delivered the verdict firmly. The petition was denied. I was declared fully competent, with complete control of my life and assets. Relief swept through me like a tidal wave. I closed my eyes, whispering a prayer of gratitude. But when I opened them, I saw Emily and Daniel. Their faces were twisted with fury, their defeat cutting them deeper than any words could. As I left the courthouse, people stopped to shake my hand, to whisper apologies for ever doubting me. Yet, I knew the damage was done. My children had not just tried to steal my money, they had tried to steal my very self. That night, as I sat alone in my fortified home, I understood the war was nearing its climax. They had failed in court, failed in fraud, failed in their attempt to declare me unfit. But cornered enemies are the most dangerous, and my children were now cornered. I whispered to myself, steady and resolved, "If they come at me again, I will be ready." They thought they could strip me of everything, but they forgot one thing. I am still here. I am still standing. The morning of the hearing arrived, with a sky that looked as though it had been washed clean overnight. A pale golden light streamed through my curtains, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something close to peace. The decision I was about to make was not one born of spite but of clarity. The inheritance I had once thought was an unshakable bond of love had turned into the very chain that my children had tried to bind me with. Today, those chains would be broken. I rose from bed and dressed with care. Not in anything elaborate, but in something that felt like me. A soft cream blouse with a navy skirt and a small silver brooch that had belonged to my mother. That brooch had been with me on my wedding day, on the day I gave birth to my first child, and on the day I buried my husband. Now it would be with me when I faced the ultimate betrayal. As I fastened it in place, I stared at myself in the mirror. My face was lined with years of both laughter and sorrow. My eyes no longer carried the naive hope they once did, but instead shone with a different light, a determined resilience. My children had called me too old, too fragile, too much of a burden, yet here I stood, strong enough to face them in court, strong enough to reclaim the respect they had stripped away. The drive to the courthouse was quiet. The city stirred awake around me, cars rushing past, shopkeepers raising shutters, joggers weaving along sidewalks. Everyone seemed wrapped in their own lives, unaware of the storm that brewed inside me. When I finally parked, I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, "This is for me. Not for revenge, but for freedom." Inside the courthouse, the air was cool and sharp. The sound of footsteps echoed against marble floors. My attorney greeted me at the entrance, her presence calm yet commanding. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. I nodded. More than ready. We entered the courtroom together. My children were already there, seated on the opposite side with their own lawyer. The sight of them cut deeper than I expected. Anna's face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. David leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, defiance written in every gesture. Emma avoided my eyes altogether, fiddling nervously with a piece of paper in her lap. Once these had been the faces I adored, the faces I would have done anything for. Now they were the faces of people who had taken advantage of a mother's love, twisting it into something unrecognizable. The judge entered, and the room fell into silence. The proceedings began. My children's lawyer stood first, painting them as victims of a mother's confusion and instability. He spoke of inheritance given freely, of my supposed forgetfulness, of their duty to care for me that had been misinterpreted. Every word was crafted to make me appear unfit, unreasonable, and fragile. I sat still, my hands folded in my lap, my heart pounding but steady. I had anticipated this. Their narrative was built on the same dismissive tone they had used with me at home, a belief that my voice no longer carried weight. They thought the courtroom would be no different. When it was our turn, my attorney rose with quiet authority. She spoke not just of the legal documents, but of the betrayal, the manipulation, the calculated cruelty. She highlighted the timing of the inheritance transfer, followed almost immediately by their rejection of me. She drew attention to messages, to conversations, to the sudden shift in their behavior, once they believed I had nothing left to hold over them. Then it was my turn. I was called to the stand. As I walked up, the room felt heavier, as if every step carried not only the weight of my own story, but of every parent who had ever given too much, loved too deeply, and been cast aside for it. I swore to tell the truth, and then I sat, facing both the judge and my children. "My name is Margaret," I began, my voice steady though my throat tightened. "I am 70 years old. For most of my life, my role has been simple. I was a wife, and then a widow. I was a mother. I devoted myself to raising 3 children I believed would cherish me as I cherished them. I gave them everything I could, not only in material things but in love, guidance, and sacrifice." I paused, looking at Anna, David, and Emma in turn. None of them met my gaze. "Last year," I continued, "I made the decision to pass on my inheritance early. I believed it was a gesture of love and trust. I wanted them to build their lives securely, to know that I was proud of them and willing to help them. But almost immediately after, I was told I was too old to be part of their lives, too fragile to join them in their celebrations, too much of a burden to include. They took my gift and then shut the door on me." The courtroom was silent, every word hanging heavy in the air. "I am not here today out of spite," I said. "I am here because love should not be twisted into a tool for control, because no parent should be cast aside once their usefulness is deemed over. I am here because what they did was not simply unkind, it was calculated, and I refuse to let my story end as one of silence and acceptance of cruelty." My voice trembled then, but it was not weakness. It was strength shaped by pain. I may be 70, but I am not invisible. I am not without worth, and I will not be erased. When I stepped down from the stand, I caught Anna's eyes for just a second. There was something there, a flicker of regret perhaps, though buried under layers of pride and fear. The arguments continued, but in that moment I already knew. I had reclaimed my voice. Hours later, When the judge finally delivered the decision, my heart raced. The court ruled that the transfer of inheritance had been manipulated, that it should be rescinded, that my children's actions displayed undue influence. The property, the assets, the security I had given away, all of it was returned to me. The sound of the gavel struck like thunder. My children sat frozen, disbelief etched across their faces. David muttered something under his breath, anger twisting his features. Anna lowered her head into her hands. Emma wiped away silent tears. As for me, I simply sat there, breathing deeply, tears threatening but not falling. This was not victory in the traditional sense. This was survival. This was reclamation. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different. The sky had darkened, clouds rolling in, but I felt lighter than I had in years. My attorney congratulated me, but I barely heard her words. I was lost in thought, replaying every moment that had led me here. I knew my relationship with my children might never heal. Perhaps the damage was too great. Perhaps they would never see me not as an obstacle, but as their mother. But I also knew that I had set a boundary, drawn a line, declared that I was not to be discarded. That night, as I sat alone in my home, the home I still owned, the home that was mine once, Aduna made tea and placed the silver brooch on the table beside me. I touched it gently and whispered, "We made it, Mother. We did not let them take everything." The house was quiet, but it did not feel empty. It felt like mine. My story was not one of despair, but of resilience. My children had tried to silence me, but instead they had awakened a strength I had forgotten I possessed. And as I sipped my tea, I knew this. I was not too old. I was not too fragile. I was not too much of a burden. I was a woman who had loved deeply, suffered betrayal, and still stood tall. That was the truth they could never take from me.